So, what should be our focus in marriage? Should it be on the vow that we made? Because we have made a vow, so we should just struggle in the marriage, or is there something else in marriage that we need to focus on, or just the vow? Because once you have made a vow, then you should just bear everything that is happening to you in the marriage, the pain that you are going through. You just go ahead and bear them because you have made a vow and you have to keep the vow. So, will you call that, for example, a happy marriage? If not,
No, that's awful.
good.
That's an awful marriage.
So what should the focus be on
Well,
to help
well,
keep the marriage
okay,
going?
okay. So if we just simply focused on this contract that we made
Yeah.
in marriage, if that was our only focus, then it just becomes it's a legal contract that's law. It's just a law, okay? And if your marriage has to be sustained because it's written, it's a law, like you must love your wife because it's written in the Bible, you must do it. If it's just legalism and force, and you're contracted to do it, will that make you love your wife? No. So just the very fact that I said that we make this covenant to each other and a covenant to God, that won't sustain you in the difficult times. And you shouldn't just, I'm just holding on, and I'm just suffering, and, my husband's a real dog or a pig, but I'm just holding on. That's not a marriage. That's hell. That is hell. What we need to see is it's about the relationship as well. The importance of marriage is within the relationship that you have with your spouse. And the love that you have for them and the love they have for you. And it's not about, hanging on and being legally bound together, because it's a heart thing. It's your heart, it's your soul, it's your emotions. It's the essence of you together with your wife, because the Bible says we also become one flesh in marriage. So we have this spiritual knitting together of soul, mind, and body in marriage. It's not just a contract. If it was just a contract, that would be awful. That's not a marriage. A marriage is not just contract. That's part of the marriage. A marriage is this incredible relationship that we have for one another. And if we're going through tough times, it's not a matter of, I'll just hang on because I have to. Like some people say, I've been married for 20 years. It's been terrible, but I'm just waiting for the kids to grow up. And as soon as the kids grow up, I'm out. And that happens so often. Now that's like the legal aspect of it, They're just going to do their duty until they can escape it, And those marriages are normally terrible. We need to think that if we go through difficult times, then as a couple, it's not about suffering, holding on, putting up. It's about overcoming and living in victory. You don't want to walk in a dead marriage. You don't want to walk in a marriage where people are fighting, there's unforgiveness and resentment and cold shoulder, and that's not a marriage. A marriage can only continue while there is mutual love and respect and honor and a willingness to work together, and not just suffering it through, but working out positive ways to make it better and walking into victory. I mean, if I thought the next 20 years marriage was going to be terrible, it would be difficult to endure it. I don't want that sort of marriage. I want to live a full, good, healthy, loving marriage.
So, Brother Tom, can you give some personal examples how you work towards a positive relationship where you feel satisfied, fulfilled? Do you have some personal examples? What you do, you know,
These are crazy questions. They are so deep. You sort of don't know where to poke a stick to start with. They're just such deep questions, aren't they? I was talking to Kerry over the last few days, and talking about marriage and living in a marriage situation. Now, me and Kerry have been married for, Kerry will tell me here.
42 years.
Oh, Kerry's telling me. Here we go. There's Kerry.
42 years this year.
Congratulations.
So we've been married for 42 years, which is a long time. Like, in today's world, that's a record, So we're doing good, and our marriage is not suffering, and we're not going bad. We are walking on in our older age into a very blessed marriage. But I was talking to Kerry. I don't know if this is on your subject, but hopefully it is. But I was talking to Kerry, and I said, the biggest thing that people have to understand about marriage is not what they think it will be. Right? Marriage is not what you think it will be. As individuals, both the ladies and the guys, both go into a marriage with an understanding of what marriage will be like for them. Okay? I said to Kerry, in my mind, now I was brought up in England with British parents, and so that's my background. And when I married Kerry, what I wanted out of that marriage was a wife that was good at housework and cooking, would keep the house and look after all the woman responsibilities. That's one thing I really wanted, because I was a bachelor, and I wanted a home where somebody would look after me and love me and put the food on the table. And I also wanted somebody who was good in bed. And that's the truth. When I got married at 22, they're the two things that I wanted in my marriage. Okay, and I'm being very frank with you tonight, and I think it's good to be frank, because sometimes we don't say these things. We're silent on some of these things because we're embarrassed about saying it. But I'm not embarrassed, because that was a long, long while ago, and those things have changed so much. Now, let me put Kerry on, and she'll tell you what her idea of what marriage should be like, okay? Can I do that?
Good.
Well, when I got married to Tom, I thought that marriage was all going to be lovey-dovey, and he would be my prince, and he would look after every need and love me all the time, and, everything would just be fancy and rosy. But that didn't happen either.
No.
So, can I ask Sister Kerry?
Yeah, of course you can.
You said in your mind, when you got married to Brother Tom, you were looking at somebody that will look after you. Is that what you said?
Mm.
Okay. And that will be your prince.
Yes.
What picture is that? Can you a little bit explain what you mean by that?
A prince would just, I guess, how do I think?
A real romantic.
Yeah, just very romantic, very like bringing me presents, flowers, and just doing spontaneous little things, to show he loves me and things like that.
I see. But this question is for the two of you. Did you discuss your various expectations? Why you wanted to marry? Did you discuss that? Did you tell Brother Tom how you look at your marriage to be? Brother Tom, did you tell Sister Kerry what you just told me now? The two reasons why you wanted to get married? Did you discuss this before you got married, or you just kept it to yourself?
We didn't really talk about it at all, did we?
No, we did not talk about it.
The only thing we knew that I knew for sure was when I was 15, God told me that Tom would be my husband. So we didn't get married till I was 21, and we worked together for all of those years. So we knew each other well as friends, very much as friends, before we actually started dating. We only dated for about 6 months, didn't we? So we got married quickly once we decided to get married. But we didn't really discuss a lot of things that we probably should have done, like our dreams for the future, what God had called us to do, things like that. But we didn't talk about any of that until after we were married, which was interesting.
Okay,
Yeah.
before I focus on Brother Tom, let me ask this question again, another question, and that is, did you or have you, is your desire or expectation for marriage, as you told me now, has it been fulfilled, Sister Carey?
Probably different to what I expected.
Okay.
So say no.
So not in as many words, but Tom has always looked after me. He was a different personality to what I thought. So he's not a romantic person like I thought, but he does things in different ways to show he loves me.
I see. Okay, so Brother Tom, you can now continue. I think that's the reason why you started talking about marriage is not what we expect. So you can continue on that. Yeah, now you can continue. Yeah.
All right.
Please.
Okay. So, so I was talking to you about my expectation for marriage as a male, and I think actually for my age group at the time, that was a very typical idea that males had when they went into marriage.
Yes.
Some people even suggest that men like to marry somebody like their mother, a mother image. You know, if the mother was a great cook and hospitable and kept the house, you know, the wife sort of is an image of that. You know, so I think I was a very normal guy with those kind of ideas. I don't think it was like some crazy idea that was too weird. I think that was probably a regular idea that most males would have going into marriage. So we both had totally different expectations. Back when we were before marriage, like Kerry said, we actually only were dating each other for 6 months before we got married. So we didn't have a long-term dating relationship as boyfriend and girlfriend, mainly because we'd known each other for many, many years before that as friends and as working together in a business. So we were friendship based. We had a good friendship. So when we did start to become girlfriend boyfriend, we knew a lot about each other anyway. We knew a lot about our personalities and things like that. But one thing we didn't do, and nobody suggested it to us neither, but we never went to marriage counsellors. We never went to our pastor. Nobody talked to us about marriage. We didn't get any studies from the Bible about marriage. We had no counselling about marriage, none at all. And like we confessed before, we both had radically different ideas about our expectation in marriage, yet we never even talked about it to each other. It was like, back in those days, people didn't talk about stuff. They didn't. You know, like, I'm not as bad as my parents, but like, my parents, I don't know too much about my parents because they never talked about themselves. You know, people didn't communicate. Today's world, we communicate a lot more freely, and we're a lot more open and revealing in our sharing times now than we've ever been before. So, yeah, we didn't talk about a lot of things. In fact, we got married, and after we were married, sometime later after we were married, we were talking, because then we were talking. Once we got married, we talked more. But we were talking about our desire to be missionaries. And we discovered that both of us had been called to be missionaries when we were teenagers. But we didn't know that before we got married. Now, isn't God gracious to us and so
Amen.
good to us that we were compatible in the call of God on our lives, even though we never talked to each other about it. But how important it is for couples entering into marriage to actually go to marriage counselors, go to a pastor, go to a leader, and ask some of these questions. What do you think marriage is? What do you think your partner should be like? What do you think his duties would be? What do you think your dreams will be, your future together, you know? What do you think your God dreams will be, and what God wants for your life and purposes, you know? Like, we never talked about that sort of stuff. It just wasn't talked about. We just got married. Everybody was getting married at our age group. And Kerry also, like, Kerry's reminding me, because she's a very strong lady, Kerry. She knew that she was going to marry me. So God told her very clearly, and that doesn't happen to many people. Not many. I mean, some people get all funny ideas of what God said to them, and it doesn't work out, you know, so we have to be careful about that. But truly for Kerry, God showed her very clearly. And I had all these different girlfriends. Oh, here.
I was going to say that.
No, go. You can go, Kerry. Go.
I was just going to say he had about, I don't know, 5 or 6 different girlfriends between 15 and 21, my age. So I watched and prayed all the way through. And apparently on my 21st birthday, when we got married, when we got engaged, and he asked me to marry him, he was going to buy me a sheepskin car seat cover instead of an engagement ring. So we got engaged instead and married 6 months later. So God knew.
I see. So I see. So you had to do some praying.
Lots of praying.
Yeah, maybe because you have already seen, God has already shown to you that Brother Tom was your husband, and so you just need to just pray about whatever.
Yeah, God just had to show him. Just took him a bit longer.
Okay. So I have one more question for the two of you. Let me start with Brother Tom, please. Brother Tom, concerning expectation, our expectation while going into marriage, you started talking about that. So, and you made mention of yourself and Sister Kerry also. So my question to you now, and it's for both of you, you answer first, and then Sister Kerry. So, being that you're, whatever you were expecting in your heart concerning your marriage, if you did not experience everything during these 40 years, how did you keep going, through the marriage, in spite of the fact that you were not fully fulfilled?
Yeah.
What helps you to put your interest or your feeling aside and keep going with Sister Kerry?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. That's a good question, and because everybody wants this perfect marriage and has all sorts of crazy ideas of what their marriage should be like, and normally it evaporates pretty quickly after the honeymoon, normally, and they realize that marriage is not going to be quite like they thought it was. So, so my marriage quickly became like, this isn't going to my plan. For instance, one thing, Kerry couldn't cook very well when we first got married. I wanted a person who could cook and look after me, put dinner on the table. Kerry couldn't even cook meals. I had to help her cook and shop and teach her how to do stuff, And so, but, I think the thing is that we have to realize, to start with, what we have to realize is our expectations are unrealistic. They're unrealistic. They are stupid, It's just not possible. Sometimes we enter into a marriage with such high expectation, we're doomed before we even begin in the natural, because our expectations are so crazy. And sometimes both couples have such extreme different expectations. And you think, how can there ever be any unity when both have such extreme expectations and both couples don't have their expectations met. So they're both feeling disappointed, ripped off, or whatever, in the situation, because they're looking at their expectation, their own expectation. It's all about me. Me, me, me. And the first thing you have to learn quickly as possible in marriage, it's not all about me. It's got to be all about the other person. Some people say that marriages are 50-50. You give 50-50. No. Sometimes the other partner gives 5%. And you have to give 155%.
I see.
It's not 50-50. And it works both sides, the give and take. And I think once you realise that your ideas were crazy and unrealistic, you're in love. You love the person. That's why you married them, because you love them. There's something about attractive, something got your heart. So you go back to that situation. It's about the relationship of who we are as people, not what we are actually doing and providing. And so for us, every marriage is the same thing. I taught Kerry how to cook, and I helped in the kitchen. I've always been a good cook, and I've always been domestic, so I don't mind doing that. It wasn't a hard thing for me to do. And so she learned how to cook, and it was, soon as she was doing all the cooking and doing all the house stuff, and she learned how to do all that very well. But I think the fact is that we have to deny ourselves our expectation, okay? If someone doesn't meet the expectation, you don't write it off and say, oh, well, I'm going to get out of this marriage, I'm going to get divorced. Because you go and marry somebody else, you'll go into that second marriage with expectation, and the other partner will have expectation. You have the same problem. So many times people, they jump out of one marriage because it's not working, and they go into another marriage and they take they take themselves. That's the problem. They're the problem, and they take themselves, and it's the same problem. There might be a nice time to begin with, but it doesn't last.
I see. I have another question for you, but let me ask Sister Kerry the same question that I just asked you. Then I will come to the other question I want to ask you. Sister Kerry, how did you cope with the fact that what you were expecting was not working the way you expected? How did you go about it to continue to be with Brother Tom?
I think, like Tom said, a lot of it is I realised that it was out of a love story book and that it wasn't true life. But also because I was so convinced that God wanted us to be together, and I also knew that it was a partnership. It wasn't me demanding of Tom, well, you must do this, 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 and this. Where he showed me his love by teaching me how to cook and how to look after the house and all that, like he showed me his love through all sorts of different ways. Not the way I was thinking of. He's not been a man to buy me lots of flowers and things like that, but he shows me it in different ways. So he's still my prince, but just not the way I thought it would be.
Okay, so then let me just ask you now the second question, then I'll go to Brother Tom. So did you have to cry sometime because what was deep in your heart was not, being manifested by Brother Tom? Did you have to do some crying sometime?
There's been times where I have cried for different reasons, lots of different reasons. But I've always tried to, in my mind, the most important thing is that regardless of what I see between us, God is bigger than that. And I've got to go back to the fact that I fell in love with him, I adored him, and if I go through a stage where I'm crying and I'm upset with him about something, then I go to the Lord and I say, Lord, can you please help me to remember how much I love this man and give me that love back again. And so I do that if we go through a difficult time. And like Tom said, we're normal people. Everything's not rosy all the time. We have challenges, and we've had a few heartaches along the way. But yeah, that is so important for me, that God can restore that love regardless of what's happening between you. And I love him more today than I did when we first got married.
Good. So, Brother Tom, how your expectation and your feeling, because this is not just about expectation, it's also your feeling. So how did you, what did you do with your feeling?
Okay. Well, this is, again, these are not, they're not light questions. They're very weighted questions. This is it's a very heavy subject in a sense that just a quick answer doesn't sort of.
Brother Tom, I like the remarks you always made. It kind of make me, oh, hallelujah.
Yeah.
You ready to play on my ego? You said, this is a difficult question. This is a hard question. This is a big question.
Yeah.
You're a good man.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess going back to this question of expectation is some expectations are going to be very deep. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be very deep. Okay. And Kerry's here, so she knows. And I'm not going to get too intimate or too frank, but I did say to you before that one of my expectations was a good sex life.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of my expectations. I think that's average for most males.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most females, when they're younger, is what they want as well. But, life's a long journey, and a lot of things take place within a marriage over many years that the whole sexual ideal isn't realistic neither. And so when there's times of difficulties in a marriage, whether ill health or child rearing and pregnancies and all kinds of things can creep in that will actually stop you having a normal sex life, then if your expectation is, I got married to have good sex, and then you don't have sex, that is actually a very deep, for me, and for me, and maybe a lot of men, it's deep. It's a deep, it's not a light thing to go through.
Mm-hmm.
It's a difficult thing to go through. It's a real testing time of you being perhaps disappointed in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you even feel rejected.
Yes.
You will certainly feel the lack of sex. Men feel lack of sex. I'm being very frank tonight. I hope it's not too frank. But men, if they don't have sex, they really notice it.
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
So for that expectation not to be realized, it is deep, deep, deep down. And it can actually bring in some, if you're not careful, it can bring in some resentment, some rejection, and disappointment can turn into bitterness and anger and frustration and all of those kinds of things. So with this kind of expectation, we really have to call on God to help us through these difficult times. We also have to really love our wives. I mean, really love them for who they are. They're not just a sex object. Would you stay married in your marriage if your wife never let you have sex again with her? Would you stay married? See, some people say, no, I'd be divorced. Well, but
that's a hard question. That's a hard question.
Yeah, it is. But is love just based on having sex or not? No, it's not. There's more to marriage and love than sex. I'm sorry, guys, for what you just think it's about. It's not. There's more to it. And when you can discover the more to it and discover the relationship can be deeper, then you will, and you can go through those times of hard times, but instead of your relationship falling apart and you taking on any kinds of anger and resentments, you just learn to, patience can grow, long suffering can grow, your love can grow. Because if you have to love your wife more during those times, you're actually growing love. Because you're giving love when you don't really want to exactly, because you could be feeling pretty mad with her, you know.
Yes.
You know? So I think it's a long journey, because if we marry for life, surely many times our expectations are going to be shattered, and we have to just keep working through them. Marriage takes on so many changes in a marriage. From when you first get married to, say, in 42 years later, such a journey is taken through that time of marriage. As we get into our old age, once we get into our 70s and 80s, marriage will take on another different relationship.
Wow.
Marriage has to continually be redefined. What was good 1 year ago won't be good for the next year. Mm-hmm. Your relationship cannot just go on the past. It has to be regularly maintained. Your relationship has to be worked upon. You have to put effort into your relationship. Just because you love each other, just because you have made a covenant to God, doesn't mean you don't have to work on that relationship continually.
Good.
You know, every day. And the thing is, we've got it also, selfishness is such a terrible thing that we think like it's all about me and what my needs and what, you know, I'm not receiving or should be. And you talk to people in situations where there's a marriage breakdown, and the people are just so, you know, people are selfish. We all are, and it's a part of our sin nature, and we all have a level of selfishness. We might not like to admit it, especially on YouTube to thousands of people, but we all have a level of selfishness. And, you know, in marriage, you're called to be selfless. In marriage, you are called to be selfless, to just give and give and give, because we have to demonstrate God's love. We have to demonstrate God's love. You know, the Bible tells the man, God commands the man to love his wife. That's a commandment in the Bible. We're commanded to love our wives. The wives aren't commanded to love us, though. They're called to obey us, but we're commanded to love our wives. Regardless of whatever takes place or whatever happens, we're called to love them.